All right, let's do this. Barbenheimer. I know I'm a little bit late, but I was doing some traveling. It wasn't any vacation type stuff. It was just a little bit of family stuff. So now I'm back trying to get some videos out, crank out some material for everybody. The 80 something subscribers that I may have on any given day. And I honestly don't even think those people watch the video funny enough. Regardless, feel free to subscribe. There will be gifts given at different milestones. So if you want to be eligible for that, go ahead and subscribe. Looking beyond that, now it's been a couple weeks, so we've been able to kind of process this whole Barbenheimer situation. I'm going to talk about the movies individually at some point in time during this video, but for now, let's just talk about like the experience of going to see those two movies. So I see a pretty good amount of movies. I think it's something like the average person goes to the movie 4 times a year or something like that. And it's probably even less now post-pandemic. But me, I go to the movies all the time. I have 2 movie theaters within walking distance from me. So most of the time, if a movie's out and it's getting some pretty good buzz, I'll probably go see it. Many years ago, there used to be this little thing called Movie Pass. And when I had Movie Pass and it was $10 a month, you could see a movie every day, I was going crazy. I saw basically every movie that came out that summer. But that transitioned into AMC A-List, and here we are now. I'm a proud A-List member, so I'm usually in the theaters, mostly day one if it's a big movie. I'm bringing all this up because I went to see Oppenheimer on the first day it came out. I went to my local IMAX. Granted, it wasn't 70 millimeter, but it was still IMAX. So I was like, let's do it. And I was shocked. I was very, very surprised. Like I said, I go to the movies all the time, so I've seen some things over the years. But what I witnessed on that opening night, it was Thursday night when Oppenheimer and Barbie both came out. It was something I hadn't really seen in quite some time. There was a lot of people there, which is common when you go to a movie on the first night, of course. But this is like the presence of the people felt stronger than usual. It just felt like so much was going on. People were lining up to take photos with certain displays. It felt a similar energy that I probably haven't felt since Avengers Endgame came out. So yeah, there have been big movies that have come out since Avengers Endgame in this post-pandemic world we live in. But honestly, those movies didn't really feel like event movies. Theme park, as Martin Scorsese would say. So I know you're probably saying, what about Spider-Man No Way Home? I saw that movie the first day and there was a very big crowd presence there, but I feel like that movie would have been even bigger without the pandemic. Like it probably would have got close to 2 billion or something crazy like that if the pandemic wasn't a thing. Obviously, that movie made a lot of money, and so did movies like Top Gun Maverick. But the presence that was there the opening night for those movies, it just wasn't the same. It didn't give that event type presence that some people hate about the movies. But to me, hate it or love it, you gotta admit it's interesting. It's interesting that we can have these 2 movies come out on the same day, and instead of cannibalizing on each other like movies are prone to doing, they actually kind of helped each other. A lot of people that were in my Oppenheimer showing had clearly just come out of seeing Barbie. And I'm sure it was a lot of people in the Barbie screening at that time that had just seen Oppenheimer. It was something I'd really never seen before. The movies were loud, the theaters were loud, people were there. You could tell, it just felt different. If you were there, you could feel it in the air. So anyways, getting into these movies and how they've done and my opinion on them, blah, 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 the usual stuff. To me, Oppenheimer was an amazing movie. The idea that we can have this 3-hour period piece be a compelling, interesting piece of cinema that, you know, the average moviegoer can go and process and enjoy and probably go home and be like, I never knew this happened. I want to look up more on this. I'm inspired to learn something. I think very rarely do you get movies like that. That's why Christopher Nolan gets the big bucks. That's why companies were lining up trying to get his services after he had his big fight with Warner Brothers because of Tenet. And this movie shows he's still that dude. He still is like that. As it stands, the movie has crossed 500 million, which is crazy. Rated R movie, partially in black and white, 3 hours long, and it's crossed 500 mil. That's wild. But IMAX helps, but even still, that's a huge accomplishment for a movie that came out the same day of a movie like Barbie, which has made even more money. I watched it pretty late at night while the dude next to me was kind of dozing off a little bit. I don't think that was the fault of the movie at all. The movie's very fast paced. It's very compelling. It gets you very, very interested in what's going on, and it kind of keeps you on the edge of your seat as you kind of experience all these things build up to this singular moment, which is funny enough, not even really what the movie is about, but that's what a lot of people went into having the most interest of, is the Trinity test and the bomb exploding. But the narrative and the acting and all the things that happened outside of this explosion, to me, it was just so compelling. And you had all these different actors really getting a chance to showcase themselves. And granted, some got a bigger chance than others. I felt like almost every actor in this movie got a pretty solid chance to show off what they can do, which is very rare. It's very hard for movies to juggle a lot of characters, and it kind of had a formula of quality over quantity in terms of all these different actors and how many scenes they may or may not have been able to participate in. It's been interesting to see the discourse around this movie. I think honestly a lot of people would not have saw this movie if it weren't for, I don't want to say I know a lot of people wouldn't have saw this movie if it wasn't for the Barbenheimer memes and the trends and things like that. So it's funny to see that there's a lot of people seeing this movie that they probably didn't really have interest in, but they probably came away thinking, wow, that was actually pretty good. Granted, I do think some people did miss the point, but that's neither here nor there. Everyone's allowed to have their own interpretation of how they see things. If I'm thinking of a critique I can have for this movie, I think the only thing that I say I didn't like is when J. Robert Oppenheimer is looking at the aftermath of the bombs. They're showing him photos. I think they should have shown that to the audience. Granted, they didn't have to show something. You're already rated R. You're already making note of it in the movie. Just show it, I know it's very gruesome and very, probably for some people, disturbing, but I think that really would have hammered home why Oppenheimer was feeling the way he was in the aftermath of everything. Because while I know the point of the movie isn't the bomb itself and what happened and stuff, I know it's about Oppenheimer and his feelings and his emotions, and basically my interpretation was the point of the movie was if you become an egomaniac, you end up destroying the world, which we see with the main protagonist and the main antagonist. Anyways, I would say go ahead and see this movie, especially if you can in IMAX still. Go out, see it. There's still some time. You might as well. It's a great movie. Maybe not for families, but it's a pretty good movie to go see. You kind of have to see Oppenheimer in theaters. It's Christopher Nolan. His track record speaks for itself in terms of the theater experience. You want to see his movies in theaters. His worst reviewed movie is the only one that went straight to streaming. I'm pretty sure it not being in theaters had a lot to do with the perception of it. You want to see this movie in IMAX if you can, at the very least Dolby. Do what you can to see this movie. I think its IMAX run got extended, so see it, stream it, or skip it. Definitely see it for this one. Now, this is where I may or may not get controversial. Okay, Barbie, the movie. So, it was always interesting seeing how this movie was presented in the eyes of fans before this movie actually came out. A very popular thing to do on the internet right now is to make fun of big, giant, studio-backed, very popular IP, big name actor, big name actress, those type of movies. People love to see those movies fail. People have been obsessed with the ideas of budgets, and these movies, their budgets are too high, so even if they make a lot of money, it doesn't count, and they really want these big movies to fail. I can say I'm someone who doesn't really care about things like that. I do find interest in budgets and how much money a movie can make, and on a very surface level, but I'm not going to be like, rooting for movies to fail. That I just don't really see the point of that. If a movie sucks, I just won't watch it and move on with my life. That being said, it was funny to see the internet. They were kind of treating Barbie like it was some A24 indie movie, Barbie is one of the biggest IPs in the world, baby. Let's not get it twisted. Movie had a star-studded cast. It was a Warner Brothers movie and had obvious references throughout the movie of other Warner Brothers properties that try and be like, hey, remember this thing? Make sure you go watch it. And as we know by some other movies that came out this summer, Warner Brothers isn't in the best spot themselves right now. So it was interesting to see the perception that this Barbie movie had amongst the eyes of people who usually would hate a movie like this. So I would say the expectations that this movie had is that this was going to be a really, really good, different take on Barbie, which it was, but it was going to be like very high quality, have a very strong message, be very coherent, not be a cash grab in any way, which was very interesting that people had that opinion after seeing the insane marketing that this movie had. That being said, I think this movie had some very, very lofty expectations that, in my opinion, they didn't really meet. This wasn't a bad movie by any means. I don't want my words to be interpreted as hate on this movie at all. The plot wasn't always perfect. I do think the messaging kind of missed the mark. Disclaimer, I did see it with a group of women, and I do live in California, and they all kind of were like, yeah, the messaging didn't really provide much to the movie. It was very, to them, they thought it was very on the nose, and I would agree with that. I'm a man, so obviously the messaging isn't going to hit as hard for me anyways, but the group of women that I saw it with, it didn't hit for them either. Even though this happens in a lot of big movies, things like that random car chase scene, which is really just a way to showcase whatever car that had a sponsorship deal with the movie, that type of stuff can really throw off the pacing of a movie like this. I do think the ending of the movie kind of struggles a little bit. We have America Ferrera's awkward monologue, which some people love and think was Oscar worthy, and other people are kind of like, this is a little awkward and a little too long. And while there's just no music in the background playing, the ending kind of just randomly occurs, and you kind of come away thinking, well, Barbie's arc wasn't really that strong in this movie, and it was kind of supposed to be her movie. Me personally, I think Ken had a stronger arc in this movie, which kind of is sad. I wish it wasn't the case, but it kind of is. So speaking of Ken, let's talk about the things in the movie that I did like. Ken was the best part of the movie. The whole Ken situation, all of the Ken jokes, Ryan Gosling's acting, all of it. That was the best part of the movie in my opinion. The movie also looked great. It was fantastic. I love all the little choreographed scenes because you can tell some actors aren't really good with choreography, and I think that adds to the charm of a movie like this. The set pieces were great. Most of the characters were great. When the movie is hidden, it's really hidden. And it is a pretty unique experience seeing a movie like this. So for that first kind of 70% of the movie, I thought it was a great time. So this is my controversial take. This is my see it, stream it, or skip it segment. So I always like to do these in a vacuum, excluding a lot of outside factors, how easy it'll be to find on streaming in a couple months, what the theater experience like, what other movies are out. I try and ignore things like that. I really, really do. So if I were to do that with this one, I would have to say stream it. While I do love what the Barbenheimer experience did for theaters these past couple weeks, restoring that feeling that we haven't really had since before the pandemic, I think as a movie on its own, I would have to say you can just wait for streaming. If you're expecting to see something this extremely high quality, top tier, 10 out of 10 experience that was kind of hyped up before the movie came out, you're not really going to get that if you're just looking at the quality of the movie in a vacuum. Now, if you want to experience this movie, seeing a lot of people wear pink, people enjoying themselves, stuff like that, definitely go see it. But if I'm just talking about the quality of the movie and how I feel about it, I would say you could probably just stream it. I really hope that's not too controversial. I know a lot of people would not be happy with that opinion, but once again, I am glad this movie's having a lot of success. I'm glad Oppenheimer's having a lot of success. I'm glad the theaters are having a lot of success these past couple weekends. It is very interesting for me to see we are living in a time where internet hype does actually lead to something making $1 billion. In years past, that was definitely not the case. So once again, thank y'all. I'm gonna keep it going if y'all keep it going.